recording's up, and why don't you go ahead and press play? It'll
Yes,
just
okay.
be a minute or so while I'm looking for something to talk about.
Oh my goodness. There we go.
Okay. So, first Suzu, maybe not super needed, just because Racha wasn't in immediate danger of death. So same thing with that one. So let's pause it for for a second here
Sure.
and go over Suzu usage. So Suzu usage, very much like a lot of other abilities such as Onanade or Baptiste Immortality. When you want to be using your Suzu, is going to be when the condition is met, and that is going to be when your teammates are in danger of death. That is not necessarily in being low HP. You can be 1 HP and sitting around the corner and perfectly safe, and therefore Suzu's not needed. Or you can be
Right.
full HP and right next to a Diva Bomb, or in the middle of their team and be very much in danger. So Suzu wants to be used when people are in danger, and usually being low does increase danger level, does have an impact on it. It's just not indicative of danger. So really make sure you're watching your teammates, their health bars, how far do they have cover, do they have ability, if it's a tank, do they have tanking abilities, do they have their mobility options left, how many people are looking at them, how many people are shooting at them. So if you rewind to like 20 seconds, you'll see like both Suzus that we use here are used when they're probably not going to die, when they're pretty safe still, and then that means that they just end up getting wasted. Like that one, we're throwing it when he still has like a third of his health. Nobody's really looking at him. He has his shield up. He has 2 supports pocketing him. Then this next one here we're about to use when Torbjorn's has a shield. You can just there's nobody even like shooting at him. He can get healed up very easily. So just watching how we're using your Suzus and making sure we're not wasting them. That way you actually have them for when they are needed. Yeah,
Okay.
making sense.
Yeah, I was just kind of like, whenever I see that enemies don't have Ana, I kind of just would rather use them than not. So,
Yeah. Well, then the traps you might end up falling into then in that case, Suzu is by nature reactive ability. Same thing with like we were talking about before with that decent immortality field, because what you might run into is if you're just tossing it off cooldown, which is how you use a lot of other abilities in the game. Like you should, for
right.
example, be tossing in on a nade off of cooldown, and you should be tossing in let's see, what are other support abilities you should be tossing in? Brig Whip Shot. You should be tossing in Sleep off cooldown. That sort of thing. Yeah, that's not really the case with Suzu, because what happens if you throw Suzu at somebody who doesn't need it, and then 2 seconds later somebody does need it? Right?
Yeah.
Then that person just dies, and then your Suzu didn't really get very much value at all. If your Suzu's not protecting someone from death, or from an ability or an ultimate or something that's high value, then it's getting very little value, and you're going to end up coming across circumstances where it just could have been used somewhere else, and then that means that it doesn't do anything. So Suzu isn't really a off cooldown ability. Of course, you don't want to hold on to it and not and use it like once per minute. That's also not the alternative. It's a balance. You don't
Right.
you don't want to be holding on to it for forever. But those circumstances for use, you use it when those circumstances arise, and this will be happening pretty frequently. That'll be happening on a almost on the cooldown basis. It's just you don't want to use it when you're kind of just poking and nobody needs it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Also, a lot of the time, I feel like I am a little slow to react with it, so I like to preemptively do it sometimes as well.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff like
Yep.
that.
For sure, and you definitely wanna, and that's all about getting the reaction time. It's all about just paying attention to the environment, the what's happening more. As you get a better grip on what's happening, the faster you're gonna be able to react to it. So intentionally thinking about how you're using it, planning it ahead of time, being more aware of your surroundings, practice. All of that's going to lead to faster reaction times, and you just gotta be careful that we're not using it in times when it's not needed. So,
Right.
all right,
Yeah.
well, go ahead. Yeah, because then there, Hanzo does need it. The other thing I'm noticing is that right now our positioning is not too. So if you rewind, I guess you. Sorry, it's difficult because usually you're able to adjust it so that you don't have to do it by 20 seconds. But for some reason the menu isn't there on the bottom right, which it should be. But just like we're kind of standing in this hallway, and throughout this whole thing, I think you've been minorly further away from your teammates than you need to be. In general, Kiriko prefers to be at a close range to teammates and enemies if you're looking to damage or heal.
Right.
Now you can do medium ranging for healing and for damage. In fact, you can do long range for damage. But the issue is that for healing, right, you're going to be super delayed with all of your healing. It's going to take a long time, a lot of travel time. You're going to
Yeah.
be delayed if you're trying to throw a Suzu on them. Suzu's going to have travel time and plus your own personal reaction delay time, right? So the further away you're positioning, the slower you're healing, the slower you're Suzuing. We also there just couldn't see Hanzo from this backwards position, and usually you want to try to see as many people as possible so that you're able to heal and Suzu at a moment's notice. Because if we were there, as an example of somewhere where we could have used Suzu if we just had line of sight, and
Mhm.
then therefore. Probably rather than standing here, where do you think you should probably be standing rather than like all the way back here?
I don't know if you can see my cursor or not, but
No, I can't.
kind of like, I don't know, behind. I think this is Anna here. I
Yeah,
would assume back here would be the only other spot I could play, since I can't play any more to the left here because of
yeah.
Widow. So
Yep. And I think that's the spot I would pick too, right? Because that spot puts you out of line of sight of the enemy. In fact, it puts you more out of line of sight than here. Notice how
yeah,
the enemy can still see you here, right? So that gives us better usage of cover. It means we have better visibilities of our teammates. We also have more. We're also closer to be able to heal. Also closer to be able to damage too, potentially. So it just puts us in better ranges. So we talked about ranging for healing. Also, you if at all possible, you want to be, if you're ever looking for damage, the closer you are, the easier shots are going to be, just
yeah,
because projectiles so much harder to land at a range, bigger hitboxes the closer up you are. So being just a tad bit closer during this fight could also help out. All making sense.
yeah.
Yeah, all right, go ahead. Yeah. There once again, like possibly could be helping out a bit. Nice TP Suzu there. Could be helping out maybe a tad bit more with the Ana there if we are just a bit closer. Alright. And then we kind of just like let Zarya run at us without really moving out of the way of it. So keeping your eyes out for Zarya and maybe just walking backwards, trying to use cover rather than just kind of standing into the beam could help to keep you alive in that situation. Though of course Sigma probably still dies even if if you back up. So but he dies if you die too. So it's just
Yeah.
better that you get out if you're able.
My thought process there was I figure Zarya ulted Ram there, so surely Zarya will target Ram in the ult as well as most of the team, so I could probably maybe just try and keep him
Yeah.
up.
So yeah, once again, then it's then therefore just rather than making, and that's completely fine to make that presupposition, right? To think like that. That's a good assessment of the situation, but you don't want that to stop you from now seeing it happening in real time. Oh, that's not happening, and then therefore backing up. Like if you see Zarya running in your direction, that's where you start backing up, because Zarya came from pretty far away, right? Like was all the
Yeah,
way behind the statue. She had to come from behind the statue to all the way down to the choke, and then she killed you. And it was just at no point were you backing off when she was running at you. So it's that's fine to make that assessment, but then as soon as the assessment's wrong, then you got to move out of the way.
right.
Okay, I learned from that.
Actually. we just lose point.
Mm-hmm.
The breeze brings relief. I'm here. My gift to you.
Okay. Pause for a second here because we've
Yeah, sure.
seen a little bit of that. I'm just going back for a second. Last time we did coaching, we did online kicking. Okay, so
Yeah.
then I presume, yep, I see it in the notes. Uh, Last time we kind of went over this same thing, so I'll do a reiteration. But this is also a couple months ago. So I'll just refresh it.
Sure.
Make sure you're just watching for the also sorry, I don't remember since this was a couple months ago. I don't remember. Maybe this year doing much better with it at this point, and this is just more of a minor point than in comparison to last time. But I am still noticing a bit of overhealing, so just watch for a bit of that. Just as a reminder, it's just anytime somebody's full HP and you're pumping heals into them, and then that's just a waste of time and effort, and
Yeah.
potentially could mean that you don't have shots for when you need shots, especially now that they even nerfed the fire rate, for your healing. Then therefore replace that with damage, get some more damage out there. We'll see as we go along in this game, but just so far haven't really noticed too much damage happening. But that's, it's only been a fight or two. So like we haven't had too much time to see, but also just haven't seen like a lot of attempts at playmaking, which doesn't have to be your entire game. It just should be happening rather than not happening.
Sure.
So we'll keep an eye out on that. But once again, when you're not overhealing and instead trading that out for damage, that just overall leads to value all around.
I get a little more wary of trying to go for these kind of like I could have shot a little bit more here, but especially against any kind of sniper or anything, I find that I die a lot when I go for shots, so I have typically stopped trying a whole lot. If there's like Ash or Hanzo or something,
Mm-hmm.
I just generally don't want to deal with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So um, let's break that apart for a second. Um, So let's think that through. So snipers do have one shot potential, but especially even if you're talking about like a character like Ash, like maybe set aside Hanzo for half a second, but you as Kiriko are probably just as big of a threat to Ash and Widowmaker as they are to you because of their massive head hitboxes, and the easy availability of just being able to toss kunai into them as they're standing still. It leads to very easy shots. And part of how you're doing it could just be with how you're doing it. If you're executing it poorly, it doesn't necessarily mean that the play itself is bad. It just could mean that you're not doing the play correctly. For example, if you're going into Hans here and you just decided to run it down main and turn the corner into him, or if he sonics you and you do it, or if you repeat the same angles multiple times, then you could run into issues where you do end up getting headshot a lot. Whereas if you're taking sniper 1v1s, right, a lot of the times getting firstly using team support if you're able to, so using your tank to sit behind, that could be an option. The other thing oftentimes is you're going to want to take off angles, which I believe if we did Ana, we would have gone over off angles. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So same thing applies with damage. If you're looking to go for damage, off angles go and get you behind them. It means that you're able to kind of get on top of them and really easily, really safely, really quickly, and then just be out really quickly. So, for example, if you're trying to assassinate someone in their backline here, now, not to say that this right now, this instant is the circumstance, because I mean, probably not. Sigma needs healing. You have Kiriko ult. They're using back. So this isn't the circumstance. But let's say like 10 seconds ago when we were just overhealing. What if we like climbed through the window and either just sat there from the window, or even what if we climbed through the window, dropped on their back line, go pow 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 into the back line, and then just TP out as soon as we feel like you're under pressure, right? Because then that's value that you could be getting potentially if you're actually landing your shots. And if you're not, then that's once again a bit on execution end of things. If you're landing your shots, that's like availability for pretty much a free kill. Because if Hanzo starts shooting at you, firstly you have 2 instant get out of jail free cards, right? You have
True.
Suzu that can let you just keep shooting for an extra second, and then you can just TP away whenever you feel like it, as long as you're just watching for it. And that if we went over Kiriko last time, we probably talked about just always having somebody, especially if you're making a play like that, think about who you're getting away to, how are you getting away, right? So things of that nature can help you win those 1v1s, but there are ways to take it poorly. Once again, using cover is going to be another thing that can greatly increase your chances of actually being able to do things. If you're just, like I said before, if right now you just ran forwards into the battle, then yeah, of course you're going to die to Hanzo, right? But there are ways to execute plays and get value that don't get you killed, because, and I know that because there are Kirikos that that do that that are able to do that. There's other players, if you're playing even a character like Zenyatta or things like that. There's flanking Zenyatas in Grandmaster top 500, right? Like, and that's the least mobile, least survivable support in the game. And I've seen people like maybe I haven't been I haven't played as much in this last patch, but I've seen top 500 Zenyatas just running around in the backline before. You're able to do it. It just takes a little bit of execution.
Right.
All right. So, and any questions on that still?
No, I think this fight is really bad for B as well. I'm pretty sure we get pretty wiped.
Right.
But
Gotcha. All right. So, there, Sigma.
there it is.
Yeah. So pause it for a second there. All right. So let's think of 2 things that we could be. I'm right now. I'm identifying 2 things. One thing that caused you. I'll make it easy on you. One mistake. I'm identifying 2 mistakes. One mistake caused your death. The other mistake potentially was something you could have done instead. Something you could have done extra here that possibly could have flipped the fight around if done. So do you maybe you want to take a stab at trying to guess what those were?
Well, I can assume that the general mistake of why I died was because I was running around in front of a map window.
Yep, and more explicitly than that, the lack of cover, right? Just being a mile out in the open, not near anything. Whereas if you're hugging this right wall, you're hugging this left wall, then you have something to get behind, right? But here, if they pop window, then what you gonna do? You either need to use your abilities, which now just waste your abilities. Whereas just using cover helps tremendously there. So that's you got it. Yeah, that's the first thing.
And I mean, probably could have Suzu'd the Ram earlier, I would say, or used Kitsune.
Yeah. So the Suzu, I think that one's like that's. But yeah, potentially, but also at the same time, like you didn't know he's gonna get shredded that fast. That one's like a skill, like that. I'm not going to to call you out too hard on that one, because that would be a really good play, high level execution to accomplish that. The one that I think is just a little bit simpler that could have helped to flip the fight is using Kitsune much earlier on in the fight. And maybe we've talked about this, maybe we haven't, but generally speaking, as a general rule of thumb, not an end all be all, ults that are used first get more value than ults that are used second. So we have Kitsune, they have BAP window, they use BAP window, they shred our whole team. Okay, well now we don't even have a chance to ult. They use BAP window, let's say we use Kitsune next, second. Well, we could potentially, like, sometimes you can like counter it, like for example here, if we use Kitsune second, well maybe we just run through the BAP window, and then Bap
Right.
window doesn't do anything. So that's potential. You know, sometimes if you're countering with an ult, that's where the second ult does get value. But the general rule applies. If you ult first, you generally get the advantage. You could end up getting some picks with it. Now they have less players who, if you ult first and then let's say they Bap ult second, well, they have less people to shoot through it now.
Right.
Maybe you kill Bat before he even gets a chance to ult, that sort of thing. It sets you up with an early advantage, so that applies to ults. It also applies to like a bit on the aggression end as well. Generally speaking, not end all be all. You have the advantage in the fight if you play the aggression first. If you're the aggressor rather than the non-aggressor. And therefore here if we Kitsune either before they ult or like right as they're ulting or right after they ult, then that means that you probably could have had a chance to win it, but because we hold on to it and don't use it at all, then they kind of just shred everyone. That makes sense.
Yeah. I also remember explicitly at this point in time, our auto was yelling at our tank to like push forward and do something, but
Mhm.
it was kind of like offsetting a little bit. But yeah,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I don't give up that easily. Kakaya?
Note that I think that's the second time I've seen you use your TP so far. So looking to utilize that more often, whether it's to, that's a very versatile ability, right? Getting closer to teammates. Oh. All right.
oh yeah, and I got accidentally nanoed here.
Unfortunate.
I was just like, I don't know what I should do with nano, so
Yeah. All right. So can we rewind, like, rewatch that fight real quick? So firstly, I guess like pause it right as we're using our ult here. Firstly, we ult, and I like that we're using it early, but I don't know if you're necessarily aware of like where their whole team is. Firstly, Genji's up top behind us here. We see him down main. We ult down main. Hanzo cuts us off. That's unfortunate. Here potentially, rather than backing off, you could play forwards with the Kitsune. Once again, remembering that you have that insta get out of jail free card of the TP, right?
yeah,
So if the Zarya looks at you funny, right, and you start getting shredded, then you turn around, look at a teammate, and then you're out. As long as once again you're being aware and not just you turn around and then your whole team's in nowhere to be seen. As long as you're just paying attention and being aware of them, and then that way you could maybe end up killing their supports here with your teammates rather than kind of having to back out. I think that your Suzu usages in this fight are pretty solid. You use Suzu to keep yourself alive through the dragon. You Suzu when you're low again, so the Suzus are good. Once again, noticing the lack of Swift Step just isn't used this fight. Even for example, TPing out a dragon as another thing is like just
yeah,
a way to save the Suzu for when a teammate needs it. It's just another easy get out of jail free card that you have to keep in mind that you have. So those are a couple tiny things. So TP potentially could be running in rather than trying to back out so that you can utilize your ultimate as long as you're because you can play off of this right corner where Matra's still in front of you if you are, so you can kind of stay in your ultimate while still staying safe is the idea. I don't
yeah,
want you to I wouldn't want you to run like diagonally left here into the middle of the Zarya. That wouldn't be very smart. But there's ways to kind of keep up a bit of pressure without necessarily inting. And that's general view of what I was saying earlier as well. Is it's being aggressive while being smart about how you're being aggressive. um,
right.
is the idea. So yeah, but you can go. Yeah, so we have to back up. Good Suzu though. Yeah, that's a bad nano. Yeah, at that point, not much it can do.
Yeah. I wonder if I can just. No. Okay. It's 2 minutes time.
Yeah.
Oh, it's still on me. Well, no.
Under my protection.
Oh, I just your replay showed up, by the way.
Oh,
If
nice.
you want me if you pause for a second, I can just pull it up real quick.
Yeah.
What time slot are you on?
4 minutes, 12
4:20.
seconds.
All right. I don't know what happened, but it worked. I just had to wait a minute.
Okay. Sweet.
It's just like checking while we were in between fights. All right.
Lick my wounds.
I've got meds. Who needs them?
All right.
You can't hide.
I didn't know what to do here. Everybody was low, and I saw Ram was ulting. I was like, yeah, try and keep him up because that ult's
Yeah.
really good.
Yeah. So here, the Genji goes top left. Soldier's low. Okay, Hanzo's low. He maybe like a tad bit late on seeing him, but then he ends up getting. Oh, sorry, Ana dies there. Good shot. We're healing up Hanzo.
What's up?
Yeah, I think that's the play. I think like that's the best you can kind of do in the situation. Not really a fun one to be in, and that's unfortunate. All right, so
Yeah.
gotta watch the gotta watch the pit. Trying to maybe once we TP in, make our way towards this right corner so that you have cover to work with, and then just watching the momentum and not walking backwards into it.
Yeah, I did not process that I had used both of my abilities there, so
Mhm.
it's like close to one of the only times I've gotten environmentally killed as Kiriko.
So you can notice some like minor stuff like that, like just little itsy bitsy things, like Reinhardt's full HP, tossing those in rather than just tossing in or kunai. Reinhardt's full HP still. Actually, now he needs healing, but tossing some at Hanzo.
Hey.
Maybe TPing in when we could have just walked in with them. Being another minor thing there, though. After you're already far back, then that TP's fine. But it's just the fact that you walk with them first and then TP
Yeah.
if it's necessary.
I like to try and keep my entire team in front of me if possible, so that I don't have to be like looking everywhere all the time because people have this issue of not being able to press the X button when they need healing.
Yep. Yeah, and usually it's a good idea. Like as long as it's not too like far back, then yeah, it's usually a good idea to keep teammates in line of sight.
My ultimate is ready. Join me.
So
And I'm just kind of healing here because I don't want to peek into like 4 people, 5 people, whatever.
Yeah. Just I guess one thing to consider, right, is Zen, Soldier, Hanzo. They all have the same HP as you. In fact, they are all 3 characters I just named have less survivability than you, and yet all 3 of those characters they kind of to do anything they need to peak and whatnot, right? So just note that it's not necessarily an insta death sentence to even see the enemy team. I think some players get worked up by that, like for example, like if there's a Widowmaker or something on the enemy team, like I'll have games where I'll watch people and they don't see like they're just the enemy team is just constantly out of your line of sight, and just note that it's not an insta death sentence to peek as long as you're intentional and careful with how you're peeking, right? Take those off angles, make sure you're using cover, standing near cover, use your teammates, stand behind the Reinhardt shield, right? How are they going to shoot at, how's Hanzo going to shoot you in the head if you're behind your Reinhardt?
Yeah.
How's he going to shoot you in the head if you're, popping up on the high ground randomly, go tot, and now I'm back down? Things like that being, not just going la 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 and like just running out to the open and standing here. Just being careful with how you're doing it. So I'm not saying that you should be, once again, I'm not saying that this should be something that you're doing 24/7 like the other 3 characters that I named. I'm just saying that it is something that you can and should be doing to attain some more value. So just be careful when and how you're doing it, but you should still be doing it.
Sure.
So here for for just healing up, maybe just if you need to, like Zarya, that's just something as simple as shooting Zarya, right? Like she's already on your screen. Everybody's full HP. No reason not to just toss in a kunai at her head. Now, if you have options for somebody else, go for it. But that's just something as simple as just getting the damage out there versus not getting damage out there.
Sure, yeah. I also felt like I had to like be the kind of heal body because our auto switched to Zen.
Yeah,
That
you'll
is
definitely, that'll definitely mean that you're gonna have to heal more, right? Like if last time I think we said, generally speaking, on Kiriko you're maybe doing like a 60-40, 60% healing, 40% damage, something like that. But it will change depending on what they're running, what you're running. If you're running Zen with Kiriko, that's very little healing on the Zen part. So yeah, you will need to heal a lot more. But it's usually not gonna be that's not gonna change it to like 99 to 1. It's probably going to be at that point more like 80 to 20. That changes it up so that it's still a big difference in how much you're healing.
Right.
But it's obviously you're damaging whenever you get the chance, especially when you see that it's not needed. All right, so here Lucio swoops in and boops us. We turn back around. He's getting dragoned. Gotta just watch the Hanzo and make sure he's not running in front of your shots. Just being aware of him. Watch for that. I'm not sure if we went over that with Ana last time, but like same thing with Kiriko, just pay attention to the obstacles and what can get in front of you.
Yeah, I mean, he had like a second to live, so he tried.
Okay, no Reinhardt. Yeah, honestly, I think you're chilling. Here, TPing over to him probably could help out a lot, right? Like imagine trying to Suzu from over here versus if we TP over to him. Now you can Suzu when he's 1 HP and being shot at by Zarya. You can heal him much easier, faster. So here, TP. There you go. It was just a bit delayed.
Because I was a little scared of running into what seemed like an almost full charge Zarya.
But once again, note it.
Yeah.
Thing. So you definitely have cover work with it. And then probably by the time Hanzo's dead, if worse comes to worse and she's still running at you, by the time Hanzo's dead, you probably are very close to getting your TP back again. So I'd probably go for it, right? Just a bit faster, and then see we do go for it, and we end up being fine, right?
Yeah.
And
I kind of left to die after it though.
yeah, so here we do TP. First thing I say is make sure when you're TPing, remember that the invuln frames for when you TP are very brief, and then even if you Suzu, that's only like an extra second. So think about like where are you running after TP? Don't just like TP in and then just like stand there, because here we TP in and then we kind of just like stand in Zarya's beam. When instead maybe you should TP in and then instantly while you're trying to heal him, instantly make a book it for the cover. Right, like like throw down the Suzu and then look up and be running in this direction rather than just kind of that sort of thing. So just be careful, be careful about like where you're ending up out of it.
Be careful, Shimada.
Okay, yep,
Let the Kitsune guide you.
good. I like the rush there. It's good. Yep.
Under my protection.
All right. Yeah, so even a couple times here, maybe just could be tossing in an occasional kunai. Zenyatta, do. I think Zenyatta here, whether or not we need to. I think that's an okay Suzu. I think like it's not
Okay.
definitely not the worst one we've seen, but at the same time, like if you're being like super aware of your surroundings, so this is once again maybe like this is I would say a mistake, just not like a very big. It's a more minor mistake, as you'd have to be really aware of your surroundings to notice that the only enemy that can see Zenyatta is Reinhardt. High HP for Fire Strike to do anything, that sort of thing. So just kind of you'd have
Sure.
to. It's a minor mistake just because like you'd have to be there's a high skill ceiling to be able to not make it.
Yeah.
Careful, we're outnumbered.
Okay, kind of once again maybe one of those times where you could just be chucking in kunai when we're healing there. Good Suzu. All right, seeming like we're holding a bit better now as a team. Yep, good TP.
There are no signs of peace.
Okay. People are full HP. Maybe if you toss in some kunai. So it's not a like insanely major thing. I just think there's a little bit less damage than we could be doing.
Yeah.
Restoring balance.
I think you could probably bump it up like in this game maybe about like 15% more. Or so it's maybe like at the moment it's looking a bit more like I'm doing like quick head maths. I'm not sure. Like especially yeah, it maybe changes up a bit more because like once again now that we're on Zenyatta we do need more healing. So it changes throughout the game. But if we're just taking the game in total, you've been maybe looking like you'll damage for like that roughly around like 20% of the time, roughly speaking, maybe like 25%, something like that. And then I'd probably say that for most of this game you could do more like 35 maybe. Something like that. And then once you get Zenyatta, then maybe a hair less. Just noticing a decent bit of times that you could be doing it. But I'll shut up, so that's not the only thing I'm talking about. Alright. Yeah, that's you're at Diamond now. Are you interested whatsoever in learning how to ult track?
Yes. I
Yes.
didn't know what you meant at first, but
Mhm.
now I think I do.
Yeah. All right. All good. Ult tracking is pretty handy skill to know. It's one of those things where like I don't. It's a bit more advanced, and I don't really teach it. Usually, diamonds around the range in which I start to teach it to people. Just because below that, there's a lot more pressing things to be working on than ult tracking. And it's also minorly more. You need to have a bit more awareness. So it's not really useful if I'm trying to teach it to a silver player.
Right.
But now that you're at Diamond, I think that this would work out. Ult tracking is basically the process of guesstimating which ultimates the enemy team is going to have so that you can come up with countermeasures to them to try to come up with plays against them. So let's talk about the how and then talk about the like kind of the why of like why would you even want to do it in the first place. How to do it. First thing you're going to do is in between every single fight of the game, you should be doing this whether or not you're ult tracking or not, but in between every single fight of the game, you want to make sure you're pressing tab. This gives you a lot of information. What ult, or did they swap characters? Did we swap characters? What ults do we have? And then what we're focusing on here, what ultimates do they have? Now, you cannot see their ultimates. You can't see the percentages if you press tab, but what you can do is use it as a frame of reference to just know what characters they have, really, is you're just kind of using it to visualize And then also you check to see if they swapped characters, of course. So what you're going to do is you're going to press tab. Here I'm going to use Team 2 on the top right as my tab since I can't press it in game, which is
Yeah.
kind of stupid. They should let you press tab, but I can't. So you look at top right, or look at your tab, you look at the enemy team, and you're going to say to yourself, last fight, I saw or heard that they used Dragon and BAP ult, right? So that means that if they just use it last fight, they probably don't have it for this next fight. Because usually how ult rotations work is you get an ult, you have an ult, you use it, next fight you recharge it, the fight after that you have it again. So it's an every other fight sort of thing. Now this will, it'll vary. You will get, some characters get ults faster. Sometimes a character did really great and you get ult really quickly. But most of the time that's and then also sometimes you play, you're on a slow charging ult and you don't do anything and then it takes you 3 fights to get it. But generally speaking, it's an every other fight sort of thing. So you have your ult, you use it, you go fight without it, you get it again, and so forth, if you're using it consistently. So last fight, I saw or heard, they used Dragon, they used Window, so we know they don't have those. They just swapped Kiriko, which means that now they don't, we know that's fresh. That's, it's like 10%. They just swapped up. Though, remember that the old percentages stuff, 30, the stupid 30% thing,
Yeah.
which you gotta keep that in mind as well. But it's fresh still. They're not gonna have it for this fight. So they don't have that too. Then maybe on the Reinhardt and McCree, and you're not too sure, so you can ask your team, like, hey, guys, did they use, you weren't paying attention, maybe you were dead, maybe something happened. So you say, hey, did they use Shatter or High Noon? Your team says, yeah, they used Shatter. So now through a process of elimination, you've eliminated every other option, that the only ultimate that they have for this fight is High Noon. And then you do the same thing next fight, and you just need to, worry about what do they use? What do they use? So what do they have now? Sort of thing. If they didn't use High Noon last fight, they probably have it for this fight. Like I said, that's the basics. Some other things that can go into that. Like I said, faster charging. For example, you're going to probably charge a. Let's see what is fat. Like probably going to charge a Bapple faster than like a Zen ult. Most of the
Yeah.
time. And then also, there's going to be a big difference between a Reinhardt who was swinging through your whole team and got 5 kills, and a Reinhardt who died first fight in the fight, right?
Yeah.
So that's other things to pay attention to as well. Now, that's the how do you do it. And that's a lot, but it's it's honestly decent easy once you start thinking about it. Another handy tip is when you see ults happen, call them out to yourself. Even if it's just maybe say it to your team too. That's helpful too if you want to say it to the team. But just call it out. Say like, hey, they just shattered. Right, and maybe if that's annoying for your team, don't say it to your team, but just say it to yourself, because then that helps you keep track of what they used if you call it out to yourself. Another thing is, do tell your team what you found. You don't have to necessarily walk them through the entire process, but tell them the end result of, hey, they have High Noon, right? Because then they get to participate in the info as well, and they get to benefit from it. Another thing here is, it's let's say we did do this, right? We did ult tracking, and okay, they're coming into the fight, and now I'm going off of what they actually have here. They have Dragon, they have Kiriko, they have Reinhardt, they have McCree. All right, let's start the fight. You didn't really do anything if you just call it out, right? Like if you just know that it's happening, like maybe it's better than nothing, but it's still not very great. They're still gonna shatter you if you're not coming up with a plan, right?
Yeah.
So the next logical step to this is, once you know that they have it, think through something to do against it, right? Think through a bit of counterplay, and there's a lot of different options you have for counterplay. Depending on, it's a little bit complex. Depends on ultimates, what combo, that sort of thing. Dragon, maybe if you have a Diva or a Sigma, or a Orisa, you say like, hey, maybe try to eat Dragon. Or otherwise, it's just handy to watch out for and not walk into it. Maybe if they have Kiriko, you tell your team, okay, they have Kiriko, I'm gonna counter Kiriko, or let's just kite and run away from it. That sort of thing. Or potentially, I don't know if you've if you've put much thought into it, but there's actually quite a decent bit of ultimates that counter Kiriko ult. Think of, for example, you have on your team, you have 3 ultimates that counter Kiriko ult. One being Zenyatta's defensive ultimate.
Yeah.
What would be 2 other counters to Kiriko ult on your team?
I mean, Dragon and Earth Shatter, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Hard counters there.
Yeah, exactly, right. You have these big, wide, CC, not CC, but CC for Reinhardt and area of effect ultimates, right? They just cover the entire Kiriko ult. So you could say, hey, they have Kiriko ult, Hanzo, why don't you Dragon it? Right, that sort of thing. And once again, don't expect it to happen, because then you'll get frustrated when it doesn't.
Yeah.
So do expect that it's not gonna happen, but it will up the chances of the play actually happening in comparison to if you didn't say anything at all.
Sure.
Now other thing, like you can, okay, so that's something you do against Kiriko. Shatter, right? And also this will help all these ultimates, a lot of them are very dangerous, and they can help what should you be looking to save your Suzu for, right?
Yeah.
Also, so like if they shatter here, you have a couple plays you can make. You can Suzu, like try to time it and get Suzu down before as Shatter's landing, and that wakes everyone up. You can try to just an easy one would just be like play out of range or play up on the high ground. Like what if you know Shatter's coming and you just sit up in the window, or you sit up on the high ground and then you just
Yeah.
use them all as soon as they get shattered, right? And then now that you're thinking. So that's the really knowing that it's coming makes a world of a difference, because it means the difference between the ultimate hitting 4 of your team and then you being able to counter the ultimate, right? Final thing, another thing that you can think about sometimes is that even if you don't have anything available, something as simple as saying like, hey guys, just stay split up, don't group up together. A decent bit of like tank ultimates get value out of your team being clumped up. So think Shatter gets value of your team being clumped up. Think Orisa ult, think Zarya grab, think Sigma flux, think Junkrat tire. If you guys are all clumped up in this little ball, then all of those get more value, much more value. But if you're all spread apart to where like grab can only hit 1 person max, 2 people max, that's a lot. You have much greater chance of being able to survive it. And once again, that's just knowing that it's there, and knowing that it's there is as simple as just taking the in-between fights. We have like 10, 20 whole seconds to do this, taking some time to think through it. All that makes sense? Any questions on it? That was a little long-winded. Any questions on that?
Isn't there like a specific amount of damage or / healing you do? Like, isn't there like set numbers before you
Yeah.
get ults?
So there are. I would say that it's only going to so that sort of tracking, I would say, becomes very very what was the word I'm looking for here? After first fight, first fight, it's pretty, it's that could be handy if you know it, but you'd have to memorize, roughly speaking, every single characters in the game ult credit, because every character has a different amount of, like, think of it like points. As Kiriko, you charge up a certain amount of points, and once you get all those points, then you get your ultimate. That's not a set number for each. It's not the same number for every single character. So you'd have to memorize the whole list of how fast people charge it. After that, it's like fairly simple. It's 1 healing equals 1 ult. 1 healing and 1 damage equals 1 ult charge, or 1 point, and then I know that you get less for tanks or something like, right? You get less ult charge for tanks and other things like that. So that's other things to keep in mind. First fight, it can be a bit practical. I honestly think that it's even mildly simpler just to if you want to press tab and see, oh, this person has like 1,000 damage, maybe they have it, sort of thing. Like, that's okay. But after that, like so it's maybe helpful first fight. After first fight, it just becomes so unnecessarily complicated that there's no reason why anybody should ever do that unless you have a calculator for a brain, because you'd have to memorize all like how many characters are there now? 35 different characters or something like that.
Something
You'd have
like
to
that.
memorize every character's ult charge. You'd have to pay it. You'd have to memorize as you're playing each individual game. You'd have to let's say it's like fight 2, you'd have to memorize what is the healing and damage of every member on your team, and then wait for the end of the fight, and then do the head math to know, oh, this character did this much healing, and this character did that much damage, and then compare that to their ult charge, and then what they had, and then how much ult charge they had previously. It's a complicated mess. There's no, it's very, like, first fight, it's fine. After that, it's just it's not. It's like I said, unless you're a super genius at math, it's not gonna be worth it.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good. All right, let's start wrapping things up here. So, let's see. I'm gonna do a quick review because we're running out of time here. Abilities, so stuff more, right? Always have someone in mind. Remember that you can play aggressive because you do have that instant get out of jail free card, and if you just hold in your crouch, you can just flick to the side and it'll do it for you, right?
Yeah.
Your Suzu, couple times we used it when people were in danger. Watch danger level of teammates, and that's just being aware, right? Awareness. Watch danger level of teammates. Maybe minor things would be like work on the reaction time. Make sure it's not getting caught up by teammates, right? Make sure it's going where you're trying to get it to go. And then besides that, abilities are probably like a medium priority for you to work on. Ult usage, ults that are used first get more value than ults that are used second. Usually best timing is start of the fight for ults. Mid fight is okay. Late fight's situational. In between fights is usually very rare. Do you want to be ulting? That includes like before the fight starts. Overall, I'd say your rush was a little bit less than your abilities. Maybe like your abilities could be even airing like a bit higher end of medium, and then rush is probably like lower end of medium. Then you got mechanics. Just go for a bit more damage, right? Like look to intentionally do stuff. It's just up it a little bit. I don't want you to be doing this the entire game, but there's
Right.
a lot of time that just it could be added. Like you go heal, full HP, chuck, heal, chuck, heal, chuck. And just like getting a little bit more of a rhythm in just like tossing it in whenever healing's not needed. Watch over healing. Do a bit more damage. Be intentional with the damage. Don't be stupid with your duels though, right? Like, and if you're dying in your duels, think about like why are you dying? Is it because you shouldn't be taking the duel, or is it maybe because you executed it poorly, right? Like you didn't use cover, you weren't with your team, you didn't flick with the TP fast enough, you didn't Suzu when you could have, like that sort of thing, right? So just think about like was it the fact that I went for a kill, or was it the fact that I didn't execute it right? And then as you work on that, maybe you'll start to execute it a bit better. Overall, that one was probably like higher end of a medium, but I don't think it was like, it wasn't out of the wazoo terrible. Then after that, we got your awareness. Pay attention to your surroundings, danger levels, but that's kind of like, with the ability, kind of goes hand in hand with the abilities. Watch where your teammates, watch health bars, right? So you know when to heal and whatnot. Watch where enemies at, what's our team doing. Also tab and all the ult tracking stuff we just talked about, which I'm not going to rehash. And overall, that one's probably like a medium, right? I wouldn't necessarily that like ult tracking is like the number one thing you want to work on. It's more like an added tool, right? It's like a bonus, right? Like it's not a necessity for your gameplay. Where some of these other things are a bit like you should be fixing that, and then maybe ult tracking comes as maybe after that, something like that.
I could say it's like almost, I don't know, it feels a lot more important for specifically Kiriko, because Kiriko just kind of denies half of the ults in the game.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. Then finally, positioning. Make sure you're using cover. You know, maybe a couple times where you're just kind of smack dab in the middle of the open. Play a bit closer to your team, and if you're trying to do damage, play a bit closer to the enemy team, right? Maybe edging on like the medium range for both of them, and close range is maybe preferred for them. And then that's about it. Overall, positioning is maybe like lower end of a medium. So to put that all in order, number 1 I'd say is probably. Now that's mildly difficult because there's. I think there's 3 that I'd probably like put around the same. So let's say number 1, if you're like really interested in it, and this could probably also, like you said, help with Suzu's, maybe just get ult tracking out of the way. Like especially like if you're excited to learn it, then
Yeah.
go for it. And then that's just that way. It's just a tool that you have under your belt. Just get. And the main thing with that is it's not going to be insanely hard. You just need to form the habit around it. Because even once you do it, you have to do it consistently. It's not enough to just do it like once per game. You got to make it a thing where you're doing it, you know, in between every single fight of the game. And that's gonna tremendously help as you're playing. So maybe let's put that as number 1. Not necessarily in terms of necessity, but in terms of just getting that tool out of the way and whatnot. Number 2, we'll put at your probably mechanics, then your ability usage, very very like, you know, close behind those. Then number 4 we'll put at your positioning, and then number 5 ult usage. Any questions?
No, it's all good.
All right, sounds good. I'm